Welcome back, scholars, to our Digital Academy. I am Professor Spark. Whether we are turning the pages of a timeless novel, our mission remains the same. Will today's sweep us into the concert hall? Let's find out together.
Look at this photograph of Victor Hugo from his later years. You see a man who spent decades observing the machinery of 19th century France to make one highly controversial point: society manufactures its own criminals. He argued that people are not born malicious, but are molded into threats by systems that completely neglect them. He builds this entire philosophy around a man named Jean Valjean. Valjean commits a crime of pure desperation, stealing a single loaf of bread to feed his sister's starving children. For this, the French legal system hands him 5 years in prison, plus 14 more for attempting to escape the brutal conditions. After 19 years of hard labor, he is finally released, but he is handed documents like this one, a yellow passport. This piece of paper explicitly brands him as a dangerous ex-convict to anyone he meets. The passport operates as an inescapable trap. Valjean is expected by everyone around him to act like a monster, yet he is systematically denied the basic tools required to live an honest life. Innkeepers refuse him a bed, employers refuse him work, and he is left out in the cold. So how does an individual build a moral life when the legal system is engineered to permanently destroy them? Valjean finds his answer in an encounter with Bishop Muriel. Desperate and bitter, Valjean steals the bishop's silver during the night. The police catch him and drag him back. But instead of pressing charges, the bishop tells the police the silver was a gift, and even hands Valjean 2 extra silver candlesticks, telling him he has bought his soul for God. If you trace his trajectory on a timeline, Valjean is locked in a downward cycle of poverty and punishment. But this unexpected act of radical compassion completely breaks his hardened worldview. He sheds his identity, builds a new life under a false name, and becomes a highly successful factory owner and a generous town mayor. But that upward path meets massive resistance from a police inspector named Javert. Javert operates on a very simple, unbending code. The law is identical to justice. Any deviation from the law is criminal, and any display of mercy is a dangerous weakness. Javert's absolute devotion to the rules leaves him imagine a world where a convicted thief could become a virtuous man. To Javert, once a criminal, always a criminal. Valjean and Javert function as walking avatars of 2 mutually exclusive worldviews: radical mercy and uncompromising law. They are destined to collide until one of these philosophies is forced to break. Hugo expands this debate from a personal rivalry to a societal indictment through a young factory worker named Fantine. Through her, Hugo proves his point that poverty functions as a social crime designed to punish the most vulnerable. Fantine is a single mother abandoned by her partner and fired from Valjean's factory. To pay the corrupt innkeepers holding her daughter, Cosette, she sells her hair, then her teeth, and eventually her body. Her descent into prostitution is the direct mathematical result of societal abandonment and exploitation, not a moral failure on her part. Before Fantine dies of illness, Valjean promises to save Cosette. Fulfilling that promise requires him to violate his parole and actively break Javert's absolute laws. Doing the morally right thing makes him a criminal again. By 1832, this friction between strict law and human suffering erupts in the streets of Paris. Radicalized students, exhausted by systemic inequality, construct towering barricades during the June Rebellion. Valjean enters this war zone to protect a young student Cosette loves. Amidst the gunfire, the revolutionaries capture a police spy who infiltrated their ranks. It's Javert. Valjean is given the authority to execute him. Instead, he cuts Javert's bonds and lets him walk away. This single act of forgiveness thoroughly breaks Javert. Valjean proves that mercy possesses a disruptive power far stronger than any violence or punishment the legal system can inflict. Javert eventually corners Valjean one last time, but the inspector is paralyzed by a psychological crisis. He now owes his life to the exact convict he has hunted for decades. The contradiction destroys him. Javert cannot reconcile his belief in absolute punishing law with the reality of Valjean's grace. Rather than live in a world where mercy and justice can coexist, he throws himself into the dark waters of the Seine. Look at the oppressive scale of these tunnels in this archival photo of the Paris sewer system. When the barricades fall, Valjean carries the wounded student through miles of this underground filth. He literally descends into the dark waste of the city to preserve the innocence and hope of the next generation. Years later, Valjean dies in peace, the bishop's silver candlestick still by his side. The man who began as a hardened convict ends his life as a benefactor, having successfully replaced his impulse for revenge with the practice of forgiveness. Hugo leaves us with a sharp warning that rings just as loudly today. A civilization's true worth is measured entirely by how it treats its weakest members, and a system of justice devoid of mercy is nothing but oppression wearing the mask of the law.